Texas is taking some pretty extreme action in regards to trans kids here. Let me go ahead and show you. So there's a letter there on the left from Governor Greg Abbott. You could see here on the right, Aaron says, Greg Abbott has officially directed Family and Protective Services to begin investigating all trans children in Texas and prosecuting their parents as child abusers. He has also instructed all teachers, doctors, and caregivers to begin reporting any trans students they see. So here's what happens if you're a child abuser. They take your kids away from you. They just take your kids. Put them in CPS, Child Protective Services. So really, this is Greg Abbott taking children away from their parents. Now, look, you guys tell me you're the family values people. That seems like you're breaking up families. You guys tell me you're against big government. This is the biggest government I can imagine. You guys tell me you're against authoritarianism. This is as authoritarian as it gets. This strikes me as going way too far. Now, look, when I think about this issue, it reminds me of the gay rights debate that happened not too long ago. And in the gay rights debate, everybody sort of got to this position where, look, you're born that way if you're gay. Now, I don't know if it's born that way or you have formative experiences during your formative years that sort of set your roadmap and then it's set in stone and sort of concrete. I don't know if it's that or the born that way thing, but either way, the inevitable conclusion is it's not changeable. We know that gay conversion therapy is a ruse. It doesn't work. You can't just like wishful think your way or therapy your way out of feeling the way you feel in that regard. It just doesn't make sense. Now, if you don't believe me, whatever your sexual proclivities are, try to imagine you going to therapy to try to get rid of that proclivity and flip it to another one and how successful you think that would be. It wouldn't work, right? It's just like, it's fruitless. It makes no sense. Like, it's just a waste of time. You're not going to be able to de-gay somebody. It's just not going to happen. Now, by the same token, I imagine that it's a similar thing for trans kids, for trans people. It's like, this is just what they feel. It's who they are. They know it as much as they know anything about themselves. And so you're not just going to be able to, finger wag at it and change it, or make people go through therapy and change it, or take draconian authoritarian actions through the government and change it. So what are we doing here? I mean, this is like textbook oppression in a sense. Now, understand something. I don't want to gloss over complexities or nuance in this conversation. I really don't, because I'm not an expert on this stuff, and I don't know nearly enough about this stuff. But what I do know is something viscerally feels wrong with the approach that Texas is taking. I'd love to have conversations with trans people who can tell me from their perspective what it's like. I remember a long time ago, somebody reached out, probably 2013, something like that, 2014, when I was doing the show. I had a trans viewer who contacted me and basically just sort of told me the basics. Told me, like, look, I was miserable. I knew I was in the wrong body. And then as soon as I started getting my hormone treatment and taking the roadmap to change, I immediately got better. It's like, okay, now you could say, hey, that's anecdotal, that's one story. Fair enough, but, you need to have a conversation with a lot of trans people, or you'd have to do some sort of giant empirical study on it to see what the best path is. But even if the conclusion of the data is the opposite, you got to still believe in freedom and free choice and people to make their own minds up and to do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody else. And that's not hurting anybody else. So that really opened my eyes on the issue of trans rights. And I'm a supporter of trans rights. I think we should add transgender people to non-discrimination clauses across the country, because there's still over 20 states where you can get fired for being trans. They can just fire you. I'm not comfortable with you being trans. You're going to get fired because you're trans, and that's perfectly legal in over 20 states. So that's unacceptable. Federally, they should be added to non-discrimination protections. So again, I don't want to gloss over the complexities. I do think there is a different conversation to be had about children in particular. I don't know. Should there be some rule about to actually transition and do the surgery, you need to be this age? Maybe. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But certainly what Greg Abbott is doing here goes way too far, in my opinion. This is authoritarian. This is draconian. This is primitive. This is the biggest government I can imagine. This is anti-family values. And I think, look, the stereotype that they've built in their mind is that, like, all trans kids are being abused by weird parents who are forcing them into being trans. That is a claim that you would need a colossal amount of evidence for. That's what that is. That's a claim that you need to look and go case by case and situation by situation and determine what actually is going on here. Are there maybe some fringe cases where that happens? Sure, could be. Could be. But is that going to be the majority of the cases or all of the cases of trans kids? I tend to doubt it, man. I tend to doubt it. Again, you want to have a conversation about taking the most extreme steps, like the surgery, that maybe there should be some legal line where it's accepted and not, in the same way that we have rules around almost everything when it comes to what age it's acceptable and not. I'm open to that conversation, but I'm not an expert. I genuinely don't think my opinion would add much to that conversation. It should all be around, you know, what the evidence says, what the data says, what trans people say, what medical community says, psychologists, psychiatrists, experts, so on and so forth. I certainly don't want to leave any of this up to Greg Abbott, and I certainly don't want him to start taking kids, because that seems really extreme, really wrong, and the whole policy is based off of imagining that stereotype is 100% valid. The stereotype of, like, all trans kids are bullied into that from weird parents. And again, that requires evidence. And to default to that position and base policy around that position is really just an indication of a bigoted way of thinking, which is what he's engaging in. So let's hope they reverse this policy. And let's hope other states don't follow the lead, because this can get real bad. It already is. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.